You know, when I first moved abroad, I was filled with a mix of excitement and, let's be real, a bit of fear. I mean, I was stepping into a world that was supposed to be so different from home. I had this image in my head of what life would be like, and it was a lot of sunshine and rainbows, but also a fair amount of confusion. You know that feeling when you step into a new place and you're just lost? Yeah, that was me. But here's the thing. I quickly discovered that comedy became my best friend in this new environment. So, let's talk about comedy and the African experience abroad. First off, the first time I tried to make a joke in a foreign country, I learned a valuable lesson about cultural context. I was at this party, and there was a group of people from different backgrounds, and I thought, hey, let's break the ice with some classic African humor. I launched into this story about how we all know that when an African parent says, we need to talk, it's never about something good. I was expecting laughter, maybe even some nods of agreement, but instead I was met with blank stares, just a sea of confusion. You could almost hear the crickets chirping. I realized then that my humor was like a foreign language, and I hadn't quite mastered the dialect yet. I mean, you can't just assume everyone understands the nuances of your culture, right? I had to learn that humor is deeply rooted in experience. My friends from different backgrounds had their own stories, their own struggles, and their own punchlines. It was like I was trying to speak a language that didn't have a dictionary, so I started to listen more, to observe. I found that humor is universal, but the way it's expressed can be so different. For instance, have you ever noticed how we Africans have this incredible ability to laugh at ourselves? I mean, we can turn the most embarrassing moments into comedy gold. I once got lost in a city that was supposed to be easy to navigate. I was following my GPS, which was clearly having an identity crisis, and I ended up in a neighborhood that looked like it was straight out of a horror movie. I called my friend, and instead of panicking, I started cracking jokes about how I was about to star in my own version of Survivor, the Lost African edition. The more I laughed, the less scared I became. And that's the beauty of it, right? Laughter can turn fear into something manageable. But then there are those moments that hit you hard, like when you realize that your experience abroad isn't just about the laughs. There's a deeper layer to it. I remember attending a comedy show where the comedian was talking about the struggles of fitting in. He was hilarious, and I found myself laughing. But then he made a point that struck a chord. He said, "You can take the person out of Africa, but you can't take Africa out of the person." And in that moment, I felt this wave of nostalgia wash over me. It was as if he had captured the essence of my journey. You see, comedy often acts as a bridge. It connects people from different backgrounds, and it helps us find common ground. I began to share my own stories, the funny ones, the awkward ones, and even the painful ones. I started talking about the time I tried to cook a traditional dish and ended up creating a culinary disaster that could only be described as a crime against humanity. My friends laughed and I laughed, and suddenly I wasn't just the African friend anymore. I was a storyteller, a comedian in my own right. And let me tell you, there's something liberating about sharing your experience through humor. It allows you to reclaim your narrative. I found that when I spoke about my culture, I wasn't just educating my friends, I was inviting them into my world. I shared stories about my family, our traditions, the wild things that happen during family gatherings. You know how it is. Everyone has that one relative who shows up uninvited and makes the whole event 10 times more interesting. And then there's the topic of identity. Oh boy, that's a roller coaster ride. I often joke that I'm like a chameleon. Depending on who I'm with, I can switch between my African self and my international self. It's a balancing act, really. Sometimes I'd be at a gathering and I'd find myself slipping into a British accent just to fit in. But then I'd catch myself and think, hold on, who am I right now? It's funny how humor can highlight those identity struggles. I joke about how I'm basically a walking cultural mashup and people would laugh, but it also opened up conversations about what it means to belong. And you know what? It's those conversations that really enrich the experience. I've met so many incredible people who have shared their own stories of migration, adaptation, and the hilarity that often ensues. We laughed about the little things like the struggles with accents or the confusion over local slang. And in those moments, I realized that comedy is not just about making people laugh. It's about connecting on a deeper level. So if you're an African abroad, or really anyone navigating a new culture, embrace the awkwardness, the confusion, and the hilarity of it all. Use comedy as a tool to bridge the gap, to share your story, and to find laughter in the unexpected. Because at the end of the day, we're all just trying to figure it out, one punchline at a time. And who knows, you might just find that laughter truly is a universal language.